and Kotak. I'm Nehal and I'm very excited to be here at the special 14th chapter of Mumbai's very own Literature Festival as we all celebrate the power of words and now the power of persuasion. Welcome to one of the most eagerly awaited events of the year, the Great Debate. India's ascension to global superpower status is imminent, promising a transformative shift in the world order. The debate is not over whether India will someday be a superpower. Will India be the next superpower? But I'll let Mr. Ethiraj expound on that further. Let me first explain the rules here because the audience is a crucial part of this debate. First, we will have the opening remarks by our chair, Mr. Ethiraj. We will then have the first vote. This is done by audience members holding up a sheet of paper with a color for the side that they support. If you see the pamphlets that you're given, you'll see two colors, blue for the motion, yellow against the motion. Let me just repeat that one more time. Blue if you are for the motion and yellow if you're against the motion. We will then have the four speakers each speak for 7 minutes. Starting with the first speaker for the proposition, then the first speaker for the opposition, followed by the second speakers for each of the respective motions. After each speaker, the chair will ask them one pointed question by way of helping the speaker clarify their position. They have 2 minutes to answer this question. After the first round of speeches is done, we then have the rebuttal, where each speaker gets exactly 2 minutes to rebut something said by the other side. This is done again by the same speaking order that we followed in the beginning, and that will last 8 minutes. Next is the audience interaction. Questions will be taken from the audience and will be answered and commented on by our panel for asking for opinions in support of each side. The chair decides who from the audience asks the gets to answer the question, and who from the audience asks and who from the panel answers each question. This will last for 20 minutes. There will be closing remarks from all four speakers for 1 minute each. The chair will then give a summation for 2 minutes and then the final vote will be taken. And this is important to note. The victory is scored on the debate not for absolute majorities, but for how many people have shifted their votes from one side to the other. As a timekeeper, I will ring the bell once when the speakers have 1 minute left, and I'll ring it again when the speaker's time is over. So, let's get the show on the road by inviting our speakers on stage. First up, our first speaker for the motion is a journalism wizard with more than 47 years in the game. He's been the big boss at Financial Express, Indian Management.
And if you support the motion, you have to show us the blue side. So let's go with the blue side first. Okay, so I'm also going to use Meher's assistance because the light is a bit against me. Okay. So it seems like, okay, look at both at the same time. So blue for the motion, yellow against. But that's not necessarily the way our speakers here have to go to. On that note, I'm going to now hand over to the first speaker for the proposition. That's R. Jagannathan. So, Jack, it's over to you. Yeah. So it's 7 minutes, and Mayor is going to be ringing a bell to warn them a minute ahead, and then at 7 to close. Thank you and welcome once again.
When I start, you are the next superpower. You're not already halfway there. Our problem is something else. I think if we start with a good amount of belief, I think we'll get there. And I think the fact that we are divided in our belief is what makes this debate interesting. But I think I shall hope to convince you that we are actually on the side of history. When we become the next superpower, we are already halfway there. What does it mean to be a superpower? There are 3 or 4 basic ways you can gain it. One is, of course, economics. Whether you're a powerful economy, you may not be the #1 economy, because that will take some time doing. You have to be the #1 military power. You don't have to be. You have to be a very strong military power capable of defending yourself internally and externally. And you must have the soft power, because once you have both the economic and the military superpower status, your soft power will automatically grow. It's only when you are a superpower that a McDonald's becomes America's superpower. And ours actually is actually preceding our economic superpower status. So that's what I think. The fact that half the audience still thinks that we can do better and that we need not be the next superpower shows that we are at least there. Half a belief is there, the other half will come. The first starting point for any superpower, any movement is belief, and I think half the belief is good enough. We'll start the process today. Second thing, I can tell you when we will be a superpower. Economically, we are at $3.7 trillion. We will be the number 3rd economy by 2030. I'm not just saying it myself. I even have a report yesterday from S&P Global saying that we'll be a $7.3 trillion economy by 2030. And I think we may reach that even a year or two earlier. I think we'll be a superpower when we reach $10 trillion economy, which will be somewhere between 2033 and 2035. I can't say when, because we don't know how many disruptions are in store between now and then. We have militarily, economically, we are halfway there. I'll tell you why. I'll come to the economic part. Militarily, we are already the country with the largest number of men in uniform, men and women, of course. And how is that? We have 5 million of them. 1.5 million in the army, another 1.5 million in the not paramilitary, but in the reserve categories, territorial army, another 2.5 million in paramilitary forces. So we are capable of managing both the external threats and the internal ones. So we are very much there. What we lack, we will cover in the next 10 years as we go. Basically, in narrative building, we are weak. We don't know how to manage information, and we don't.
In our case, it's preceding it, but does that work? Is my question.
No, it doesn't, because if you are going to, if soft power precedes, anybody can just grab it and claim it's yours. So normally it should follow hard power, but in our case, our soft power things have been so strong that the world has taken it up long before we told them that okay, this is ours. So that's the problem.
Okay. Nilakantha Nares, you have 7 minutes.
So I guess people on this stage outside of me are veterans in their trade, and so they know what a superpower means. I have been a grad student most of my life, so when I was asked to debate this, the first thing that I did was, well, went into a bunch of international relations literature and found out what the definition of a superpower was. And as an aside, if any of you here are wondering which major to pick international relations. They actually write off their opinions in academic journals and get them published. I couldn't dream of doing that in my field. Anyway, so the consensus definition of what a superpower is, according to it's rather vague, but the consensus view is that there needs to be overwhelming might in 4 of these areas, right? Military might, economic might, administrative capacity, and moral purpose. This is what the general literature on international relations defines as a superpower. And when they mean might, they do not mean an ability. For instance, let's take military power. They do not mean an ability to defend your borders robustly, or even be a regional hegemon that India sort of imagines itself to be in the Indian subcontinent. What they mean is projecting fear in the hearts and minds of every other aspirant of superpower or an existing superpower, right? Like you can think whatever you want about the Indian military. It is not striking fear in the hearts and minds of the US Navy along the Indian Ocean, right? And until we get there, or should we even get there, India's, its military might simply does not measure up to the standard that has been defined. Similarly, and more importantly, let's just stay on the question of military might. India is still a large importer of heavy machinery from Russia. It doesn't matter how many people we have, right? Like, we are not in the 19th century where the number of men in uniform matters at all, or even before that when the Brits came in. I don't know how 2,000 people came and occupied this country. So it does not matter how many men in uniform you have. It is largely military hardware, and our primary sort of source of that military hardware is entrenched in what is a trench war against a tiny country called Ukraine. And we are sort of dependent on them for our military hardware. You could argue that we have diversified since, and we have made progress in our own sort of manufacturing capacity. All that is true, but the fruition of that is probably a generation or 2 or 3 ahead, and any number of things could go wrong between now and then. And so to argue that we are on the path of superpowerdom in military might is, to my limited understanding and as per the definitions laid down in terms of striking fear in the hearts and minds of our adversaries, allies, and existing superpowers, is simply just not the case. More important,
Administrative capacity is weak.
yes. So the infant mortality rate is a catch-all, and the reason why it is a catch-all is precisely that it is easy to measure, difficult to fudge.
So why infant mortality and not anything else?
Yeah, that's so. The reason why infant mortality rate is an absolute measure of how well all societies, and particularly developing societies like India, are doing is precisely that. If you go to any developing society, one of the biggest problems that the state has is in its ability to gather data. Data is often wrongly collected, it is fudged, so on and so forth. It's more difficult to fudge a child's death. And more importantly, when a child falls sick, it doesn't matter whether its parents are rich or poor, the care-seeking behavior is the same. And children do not get complex diseases like older people do. They don't get cancer, and so chemotherapy is not the reason why children die. Most children in India die because of dysentery and diarrhea, eminently preventable diseases. And in this, the capacity of the government to actually meet that is very, very visible. And that's the reason why international literature often cites infant mortality rate as the primary measure of administrative capacity. And India is placed between Kenya and Eritrea. Do any of you place either of those two countries, Kenya and Eritrea, on the path of superpowerdom? I suspect not. What makes you think India is any different? Okay, got it.
From an American author, Idu Koyenikan. It says your pride in your country should not wait till the time your country becomes great. Your country becomes great because of your pride in it. I found it very relevant for today's debate. India is a very diverse nation. A nation so diverse that we always have to have a very conscious dualistic approach towards its upliftment. And our approach since 2014 has been very clear. Empowerment of those who are underprivileged and enabling a higher, an exponentially higher ambition quotient for those empowered. So while on the one hand we will diligently pursue the task of providing tap water connections to every home, a Herculean task started in 2019, 13 crore households have been provided, and that, by the way, would have immensely reduced child mortality, but obviously you live in a time war. At the same time, when we do that, we will not shy away from setting big, hairy, audacious goals like setting up our own space station in 2035. While we continue to achieve saturation levels for 300 plus social welfare schemes which have enabled distribution of some 25 lakh crores of welfare measures across the population, we will not shy away from our target of hosting our first Olympics in India in 2036. So this duality explains in today's debate or today's understanding of whether we are headed, which I don't see why anybody should have a doubt, but also have to be based on a combination of data and sentiments. So quickly, let me come to data, which would help you explain the exponential, the magnitude of the change which we have witnessed in the last 5 years. Our GDP in 2014, 98 lakh crore. What is it now? 160 lakh crore. Capital expenditure, 3.92 lakh crore. Now 10.9 lakh crore. So by the way, that to all those people who have a permanent skepticism about employment, a 10.9 lakh crore capital expenditure can simply not be jobless employment. Come to social welfare schemes. When we have created 50 crore new Jan Dhan bank accounts in the last 9 years, and by the way, 60% of them belong to women, that shows the kind of empowerment which has happened in the last 9 years. But it's important to focus, to understand the change which is happening at the grassroots level. The DPI, Digital Public Infrastructure, which we have created based upon Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, Mobile, that was a very conscious there was a very conscious process that went into it. Today, the data cost in India is the lowest. Today, India has 120 crore mobile users, 60% of whom have mobile connectivity. So imagine the kind of human capital that has been created going ahead, because without mobile connectivity, your work cannot function in a smooth manner. Now, when it comes to growth projections, you are all aware of our growth projections. In the next 3 to 4 years, we are going to be the third largest economy in terms of GDP. But since time is short and sentiments are as important as data, let me delve on the larger changes which have happened at the geopolitical and the geo-economic level. The India-Middle East European corridor, which we are giving shape to, is bound to be a game changer, a better alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative, at the core of which was the vicious debt diplomacy trap. But sadly, on the day when we were scripting it on 10th or 11th September at the G20 final summit, one of the opposition leaders was in Brussels singing praises for China's BRI. So I think that's a danger going ahead, that's a real danger.
Outline all the schemes, including the water part, the bold targets. My question or clarification is there anything that you're suggesting that is bottom up, which is a little closer to what you're calling this?
That's the dualistic approach we have. So today, when a woman in a remote village who had to travel a good 5 to 6 hours simply to avail of her, simply to take out her pension money from a bank, today she does it in mere 30 minutes, she goes to one of the common service centers set up in her village, where based upon her Aadhaar identification, the common sense service center guy immediately finds out whether the amount has been transferred to account. She makes a payment, she makes a transfer through Digi wallet, and that amount is taken. So there is no way that our approach is top down. Rather, it's the deft blend of both bottoms up and top down.
So anyway, so you're saying, I think you're saying the empowerment is flowing up, the targets are flowing up.
To understand this, you'll have to delve a little beyond it.
Sure.
Okay.
So which we don't have time. Okay, but no.
Can India be the next superpower? Yes. Should India be the next superpower? Absolutely yes. But the question today is, will India be the next superpower? The answer is no, because we're not headed in the right direction. What is a superpower? When we talk about economy and military and soft power, which I agree with, first and foremost, superpower is a country that is respected, admired, envied, and hence feared. Respected, admired, and envied, first by its own citizens, next by citizens and leaders of other countries. With this framework, let's see if we are headed in that direction. Let's take the economy. They will tell you that India is the fastest growing GDP. What they will not tell you is this: 150 million Indians are dependent on Mahatma Gandhi Narega program. This is the government of India's data. What is the Mahatma Gandhi Narega program? When someone is in absolute distress, when they have no other option of income, they go and demand work under Narega. There they have to toil a whole day and for bare minimum wages. 150 million people are dependent on Narega. Now ask these 150 million people, do you think do they realize India's economic strength? Do they think India can be the next economic superpower? Just to put that 150 million in context of the GDP, all the private sector companies put together, which most of us here represent perhaps, employ 10 million people. 15 times more people are penniless and hapless, and they're signaling to us that we don't have any hope. Please give us bare minimum wages. And they certainly are not telling you that India as an economic strength or India is on the path to becoming the next economic superpower. Thank you for asking that question. I should have clarified. It's the highest in a decade.
Wow.
The number of people that have demanded
As a percentage of population?
no, the absolute number is the highest in a decade, right? Now, Narega demand is inversely proportional to economic growth. So in 2016 and 17, the economy was growing, Narega demand was lower. The Narega demand in the last 3 months, for example, is the highest, exactly when India apparently was the world's fastest growing economy. So as it's not measured as a percentage of population, it's measured in terms of absolute demand because it's inversely proportional. When economy is doing well, there are jobs, there are incomes, and so people are not forced to go demand Narega. So Narega is in some sense an unemployment insurance program.
And you're saying there's no pandemic effect on this number at all?
No, this is not the pandemic years. So the pandemic years have been left out, and then this is the last 3 months are the highest in a decade.
Okay. The second clarification, you said one election, one cuisine. Which cuisine were you referring to?
Vegetarianism.
Okay, so now each speaker gets 2 minutes to rebut something said by the other side. And is there a sequence that we follow or we go anyway? Same sequence. Okay, so we go with Jaggi first. Yeah.
Moral purpose. Let me tell you, neither of any of the superpowers have had any moral powers. They have moral posturing. They have not had any kind of moral purpose, apart from using that moral purpose to put other people down. Okay? That is what they have done. They have not had any moral purpose. Let me tell you, if at all anybody had moral purpose, it was us, and we have been losing throughout with all our moral purpose. We're talking about non-violence and we are getting beaten up everywhere, and then you think that is moral purpose. No way. I think moral purpose means standing up, being militant. The only way you can prevent violence is to be ready for it. The only way for peace is to be ready for war. There is no other way to do it. There is no way to do it. That's one point. Second thing, you talked about India lacking the administrative capacity. I'm saying it's a long process. For the first time in the last 10 years, I think we have built state capacity. We have developed, how did we vaccinate 200,000 people? We did it because we built state capacity, we built administrative capacity. How did we reach bank accounts to every house? Because we had the capacity. How did we reach electricity to the last mile? Because we had the capacity. How did gas pipelines reach everyone? How does water reach every house? How does Swachh Bharat destroy dysentery and the kind of deaths that create informality? Because we had the state capacity and the will. So what I am trying to say is, it's easy to say that, oh my God, these numbers are bad. But the point is, you have to compare this number to what it was 20 years ago. It is better. That is what it is.
The opposition. So, it's like
Most of them are for yellow, but हमारा तो green है भाई.
okay, so no, you'll have to do only one, I think. Two of you. So one of you is blue, one of you is yellow. Okay. So that's good harmony. Okay, so I think it does look like yellow seems to have edged out the blues at the end of this debate. So thank you all very much for.
और ये बाकी कैसा था? हाँ ठीक है, चलता है. वो डिबेट थोड़ा रहता है ऊपर नीचे, बट मे बी नॉट वेरी इमीडिएटली, बट मे बी इन कमिंग फ्यूचर बन जाएंगे सुपर पावर.
अरे बन जाएंगे.
ठीक है. दिन कैसा था?
दिन तो मस्त.
चलो बाय बाय. लेट्स मीट टुमारो इन डे 2. बाय बाय.